Here we go. I left my home. To join the army. That day I left. My mama cried. She thought that I would surely die. I left my wife. Standing at the door. She knew that I would die at war. I left my son. Laid in the yard. That little boy. Him start to ball. Oh me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside and Musta. And I'm lucky again to have with me another ex-service member who served with a lot of distinction and had a very remarkable career. So with me this morning is none other than Warrant Officer Class 1 Lennox Lenny Ingram. Mr. Ingram, good day. How are you? And thank you for joining me.
I'm fine, sir, and thanks for having me also.
Yes. So this is not our first rodeo because for those that are watching, we actually attempted this recording on a previous occasion.
Right.
And we had some technical difficulties, so we're going at it again. But the good thing is that for those who know Mr. Ingram, he's not a boring fellow to be around, so it's good to sit with him again and go back through. So I'm sure there are some aspects of what we spoke about previously. He'll use the opportunity to expound on it, or some things that were never said we can get into. Right. But as usual, Mr. Ingram, let's get going now. Let's tell us a bit about yourself prior to us joining the JDF.
Well, I was born in a district called Porus in the parish of Manchester. That's where I grew up. I attended infant school, Porus Primary School, and from there I went on to Manchester High School, where I did my studies. Growing up in Porus was a typical country boy. In those days, we had a lot of fun growing up in those days. We went to the bush, we shoot bird, we play cricket on the road, and all the fun things that boys would do back in those times, So growing up was fun. I am from a big family. I have 9 brothers and 5 sisters, and I fall somewhere might be just above the middle, So I had a lot of company to give a lot of trouble with, So, my time growing up was very enjoyable, and when I reflect on those days, it's sad that the youths nowadays, won't be able to, or they're not able to experience that kind of life. But as I say, I went to Manchester High School 1973 to 1978. I graduated in 5th form. From there, I had some brothers in Kingston, living in Kingston by then. So I had, basically migrated to Kingston from the country, which, was another excitement, because as a country boy, it's always excitement coming to Kingston, to visit and stuff like that. Yeah. So came to Kingston, lived with my brothers for a while. Well, up until the time that I joined the army. About 2 years before, after leaving high school and joining the army, it was about 2 years. During that time living in Kingston, I was, seeking jobs. I started going back to school at one point. But you know, I I was always fascinated by the military, and even though I was fascinated by the military, I didn't really have a desire to join of such. But during that 2 years that I spent after leaving high school in Kingston, I met some friends. Some of them eventually, I went to pass out, get to experience the whole excitement of passing out and seeing the joys of young soldiers passing out, the celebration that they had with their families and stuff like that. And after a while, I think I got to love that kind of thing, because I've gone to several passing outs before I actually joined the army. So I decided to, me and one of my friends, we went over to Upper Camp, and that's where we went and got the forms to fill out, the application forms to fill out to join the army. So we filled them out, and I think we dropped them off at the post office, and we were expecting a call, in a quick time, but that didn't happen till about a year, So seeing that we weren't being called after 6 months, I think our interest started to, we started looking somewhere else, to see what other careers we could have. But after about a year, I don't remember if it was a telegram or a letter or whatever the case is. And I didn't even know that they still had us on the list. Anyway, we went and we did the test. I got through. That was 1981. I got through. That was about July, thereabout. And I always tell people, that I started doing army work before I even became a soldier, because that day we went to do the test. Well, went from early in the morning, and I didn't leave there until about almost midnight. Because after doing the test, and we those who made it were successful, we actually started doing fatigues. Yes, they sent us over by SD, which was SD at the time. We load up trucks, cheers, them all over the place. So, I started, that was my first army experience doing fatigue,
Mr. Ingram, that not right though. That no right whatsoever. We can't do that now,
Well, I know
that.
Do
that now. There's no way you can have a man that come look the work and you end up again fatigue.
Yeah.
For load truck.
Yeah, but I mean, we were so excited that we didn't even, we would do fatigue all night.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Because we wanted to get through to become a soldier. So, and basically that is how that is where my journey started.
Which month in 81 did your intake start? And the reason I ask is because I remember speaking to WO1 Mancini Bennett.
Yes.
And Mancini said when he joined the reserves and he changed over, he went to Newcastle in 81.
Yes.
I think, 81.
Right.
So I was wondering if if his grouping came up and saw your people in Newcastle, your intake.
My intake started August. I can remember I went to Newcastle the 10th of August, 1981. That's the day I went to Newcastle. So we basically started training about a week after that. Because we always get a grace week.
Grace week.
So I think Mancini is because when they were changing over from 3G, they would normally send them up to join an intake.
Yeah.
So my intake was 42. I don't quite remember which one, if it is 43 or 44. He might have started.
I think you said he came up there in about November thereabouts or something like that.
Could be intake 4. Because in that year, sir, we had about
I remember.
we had about 3 intakes. Because
Okay.
I went up, we saw intake 41. While I was there, intake 43 came up and joined us. So it was like 6 weeks apart. I think 3 intakes were trained that year. Right. So I think he might have been in intake 43.
Okay.
Right, sir.
Yeah. So how was the recruit training like back then? And
Well, you know, and I must tell you, even though I might have gone to a couple of passing outs, I only had some experience with the parade itself. I didn't know what to expect when it comes down to, you know, what we would be doing in terms of training. And the day that I went up on to Newcastle, the first thing that greeted us when we came off on the square, intake 41 was lined up on the square, and one of the sergeants was walking down the line and giving each man a box. And my first thought was to jump back on the truck. I head back down to Kingston because I said, what is it? What is this I'm getting myself into, you know? Anyway, came and, you know, we started getting settled in. Our grace week, we were still not expected, still not
I don't want you to skip past what you said, you know, Mr. Ingram. You said the sergeant gave every man a box.
Yes, sir. It was
you
walking.
Get a box too?
No. It was intake 41.
That was going walking out.
No.
They were in training.
They were in training.
Okay.
They were a couple of weeks ahead of us. Okay. Well, I ended up getting my share box, you know, sir, during my training. So it's you know, so you know, I can't give you. I had a schoolmate that you know, he and I, we went to Manchester High, and during the grace week, you're running up and down in our shorts and our buttercrepe and all them things all over the place. I saw him one day and I said, wait, and I called his name and him said, wait, Ingram, you up here? I said, yeah, man. Some said, what you do up here? I said, well, you know, I'm training to become an officer, you know. I said, what? And he and I had a good conversation, and when we were finished, him said, look here, no? Anyway, from now on, it's sir. You hear? I said, yes, sir. You know, but when we actually started training, you know, it took us a while to, you know, really get into the routine. We had some really great instructors, to include the sergeant and the DSM. Oh, my DSM was Lake. DSM Lake. I think, yes, DSM Lake was my DSM. At one stage, I think he went on a course while the intake was up there, and you had Arnold, the Eagle. He was a color sergeant, so he acted as a DSM for a good while, and we were dying for the DSM to come back because that man who was a terror, you know. Yes.
So it going on, you know,
yeah.
when a man get the opportunity for acting now.
For act, yeah.
Drop no catching him rougher than the man, the substantive man.
I tell you, we were dying for the DSM to come back, you know. But my intake was a small intake. It was only 2 platoons. We started with about 60 something. So the 2 platoons had about 33, 34 recruits. So we lived at Albergas and Pure Ridge. So one platoon was done by Pure Ridge, and another platoon lived up by Albergas and Top Albergas. That I don't know if you remember the Chief of Staff cottage. Yeah. Right. So those buildings just below the Chief of Staff cottage, Albergas, low and upper Albergas, and another platoon was housed in that location. So that is where we did our training, because intake 41 was down the bottom. So you know, living up that side, it is, a real challenge, you know, because when you're moving down in the mornings for activities, whether it be drill, whatever, you have to walk with everything that you need for the day. Because you're not gonna get a chance to go back up there. So you have to walk with everything that you have, that you need for the day, for drill. And when you finish drill, weapon training or whatever the case is. So you'd go down with your large pack full of things and your 4-forward and your boot and everything, you know. So sometimes by the time you reach down on the square, you would fall down, coming down that steep hill. A lot of times, you know, you slip and fall and nasty up your clothes, and you know, you go on parade, you're gonna get battered and dubbing and everything.
And I take it you're in hard boots at the time.
Exactly, sir. So you have to, because you're dressed for drill in the mornings. That is in the initial part of the training. So walking down your hard boot, it was really a challenge, you know. Right. So but you know, as a training continued, you start to learn how to manage your time and manage, you know, what you're gonna do. So things, you know, started to get less and less difficult. So you know the routine, and you prepare yourself from the night before. We had a very interesting time in terms of our instructors. You know, they had some routines that really, you know, sometimes I sit down and think back. I say, you know, it's something, because I can remember I live at Albergas, and for the first part of the training, we weren't allowed to sleep in our beds, and you might know that type of thing. So we made up our beds, and we had to sleep, and we slept on the floor, which we didn't mind, because if you sleep in your bed and you can't make up your bed properly next morning, you know what's gonna happen. So once we make it up and get it right, you know, we're not gonna sleep in it. So right, so we used to, one thing with those time, you know, sir, we had a lot of kit. So we had 2 DMS boots, we had 2 hard boots, we had the black belt that we had to polish and clean the brass. Our rifle sling, we have to polish and clean the brass. So in the nights, when we are gonna prepare, because you know, before you really learn how to clean a hard boot, you know, you spend one whole night cleaning a hard boot. And when you bring it to the instructor in the morning, like just before PT, you wake him up and say, sir, this is my hard boot, because he has to inspect them. And you know, I'm gonna throw them through the window. Throw them straight through the window. So, you know, no rest, no sleep. And it ended up that we started to go to the entrance of Catching Speak. That is where we'd go every night to clean our hard boot and our belt and everything. Our two hard boot, 2 rubber boot, belt and everything. That's where we had to clean them.
But the good thing is that you weren't coming from the square. You know, if you're coming from top camp, it's not far. You have to travel.
You mean to
the Catching Speak entrance?
Right. Yeah, right. That's yeah. So, but I mean, we didn't have the luxury of time to stay indoors to do that. So we had to go. Everybody, the whole squad had to go right at the intersection there, and we clean and then have it thrown through the window the next morning, you know. And that went on for quite a while until, you know, we started to get the hang of it. So, and being so near to Catching Speak, you know, that's where we went every morning for PT. Every single morning, our platoon sergeant, Roddy Pring, I can't forget. Every morning we went to Catching Speak. Every single morning, even the day that we were passing out, we went to Catching Speak. And that time, Catching Speak didn't have a road. I mean, a paved road. It was a track with stones and mud and everything. And we were going up there in our hard boot too. You know, so. But as I said, as the training progress, you know, you start to get the knack of things, and you know, we had intake 41 to contend with, because they were the senior recruits. So, you know, in time we had the instructors to contend with, and we had them to contend with. So we were getting dubbing left, right, and center from instructors and senior recruits, you know, and that is what made it a little bit difficult for us. So, you know, we being a small intake, you know, the instructors had more time to pay attention to people. So you hardly can slip under the crack because you're always seen, because there's not enough people for you to hide behind. So we were monitored very closely. We had some instructors. I mean, I think some of them were real good instructors. As a matter of fact, all of them were good instructors, but I think some of them were cruel. Downright cruel. And you know, I wonder sometimes how do they arrive at some of the things that they did to recruits? You know, but I was told that we had it soft. There were people before them who were worse. And I was wondering, you know, some recruits never die. You know, but I think that method of training, the roughness that we went through, even though I said sometimes it was cruel, it, you know, ended up doing us some form of good when we became soldiers. In terms of, you know, the situations that we met upon doing our jobs, you know, going to the bush and all that stuff. So I was the best recruit in that intake. And I think I started to shine late in the training, because all along I was in the squad. I could do my work, but I actually got the squad leader tape about more than halfway through the training. And told by my instructor that I was being watched, because even though you know that I'm not a very outspoken or loud person, but I always like to know that I'm doing the right thing. I know what I'm doing. So it was late down in the training before I really got the tape, because by the time they really would realize that I have some leadership ability, you know, when we went to the bush, stuff like that. So, and from I got a squad leader tape, you know, I think that made me settle down a little bit more. And I started getting some responsibility that, you know, even helped me more to be more of a leader. And I never looked back. You know, I just started to work hard, and I eventually became I was awarded the best student. I don't know if I should mention some, you know, some memorable incidents. Well, some of them not so memorable at all during my training. As I was saying, I got my fair share of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can remember my training officer was they call him Red Beret. I'm trying to remember his right name. I don't remember his right name right now, but Red Beret. I can remember one night we were at the dining hall. We were lined up to go for supper. It was because supper was late and it was in the night. I know we lined up at the step there, and we were looking down Kingston, watching the lights and stuff. And he came down there. We didn't see him, and he came down there, and he was saying that why is there so much noise down here? We are the squad leaders. They call all the squad leaders and lined us up, you know, sir. And let me tell you something. The first box I got, you know, I heard like a bell was ringing in my ears. And the second, it's 3 time box, you know, 3 bucks. The second box I get, you know, all the light went out down Kingston. You know, no light was down there. No light. Eh? The third box I got, I didn't even feel it because my jaw was numb. There were several occasions like that. I can remember when we had 6 weeks drill competition. We sent our KDs. Those time were KDs. We sent them to the laundry, the express laundry. So we were to write our names on the collar. But you have to lift up the collar and write it around where it's gonna fold down.
Mm-hmm.
But I write by one on the other side. So when it went to the laundry and came back, when I beat my collar, I could see my name on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And my instructor, I don't know where I'm getting this piece of board, sir. And let me tell you something. I thought the man was going to kill me tonight. And that was the time I planned that I'm gonna run away. Another recruit who also got some licks, and both of us planned to run away the next morning. But when he came to wake me up just before PT, I told him I changed my mind. Because when I was going to Newcastle, I got a good send-off from my family and friends, and they were even calling me soldier from them time. How could I let them down? I said, I couldn't
go back.
I couldn't go back. I said, look here, man, I'm gonna stay. And he ran away.
Yeah.
He ran away, But I'm glad that I didn't, go that route, because I ended up, I think, where I sit today, I benefited a lot from joining the army,
Yeah.
Really great experience.
Yeah. So okay, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna give you another incident. That there's sometimes a lot of recruits are afraid of their instructors. We were fearful of our instructor, yes, because when he gets really mad, he can do you some things, but he was one of the cruel ones, right? And we realized that from early. But so we always try to please him. I think it was our second range week when we came from the range and came on the square, and we started moving to Pure Ridge and Albergas. So we lift up box and everything and all our belongings, and because we wanted to go up to have a shower. And so we went up and we settled in, and he was down the family shop having a few pints with the remainder instructors. And when he came up, because I'm the squad leader, so I'm responsible for his things. But we never bring up his box. We left his box down there in the square and we never realized. So when he came up and he called me and he said, he called the squad and he said, "Where's my box?" That's all he said, sir. And he went to his bed. He went to have a shower and went to his bed. And within about 10 minutes, the box was inside his bunk. We went far down by the square, in about 10 minutes and come back up with it.
Back up with it.
The fact that he didn't punish us at that time, he just asked, "Where's his box?" And he went to bed. We didn't sleep the whole night, because we're already thinking, what the hell is this man gonna do to us now? So without that is the effect that instructors have on recruits. Without even laying a hand on you, they can do some things that really, get us scared. So that is one of the things that I remember very clearly when I was a recruit.
So when you finished training, where did you go? Which unit did you go to once you passed out?
I passed out the 12th of December 1981, and we walked down to Upper Camp, and then in those days you were actually selected to go to various units. So it's not like in recent days when recruits would come down as a group and they would still stay together until for a while before they go after their units. We were actually sent to our units as we came down. So I went to the 1st Battalion. They were in Manique. So I can remember the Monday morning, and we had those who were sent to the 1st Battalion, we went on trucks and we went down to Manique. So that is where I actually started my being a soldier, 1st Battalion Jamaica Regiment. We as you move through your career, recruit, you have different phases in your career that they are different in a whole lot of ways, different in terms of personality that you interact with, different in terms of how you do things and what you do, But joining the 1st Battalion, I went to Delta Company. I was in 11th Platoon. My sergeant major was Cunningham. I don't know if you know Bugman.
I heard of the name.
Okay, right. Sergeant Major Cunningham. He was a real character as a sergeant major. I can remember my platoon sergeant was Lieutenant Stewart at the time. My officer command at the time was.
You mean your platoon commander?
My platoon commander, sorry.
Yes.
Lieutenant Stewart. I think you should know him. I'm talking. He's a pilot.
Errol Stewart.
Errol Stewart, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Major Kerpens Lee was my officer. Was my OC, I think, at the time. Yeah, and I actually spent most of my time in Delta Company before most of the time I spent in 1 year was spent at Delta Company. I stayed at 1 year until I became a sergeant. So I think after I left Delta Company, as a matter of fact, at one stage I actually disbanded Delta Company. Not because it was a bad company or anything, because Delta Company was actually a very good company, but because they were trying to streamline, because you had Bravo, Charlie, Delta, you didn't have Alpha, so they wanted to start the companies from Alpha Company. So they disbanded, or they dismantled Delta Company and they formed Alpha. So I ended up going to Alpha Company after. I mean,
and I assume that this was because at one point in time Alpha was disbanded as well because of the Green Bay incident.
Yes.
So I assume they went back
to that
to get the Alpha. So they
right.
shut down Delta and brought
right.
Yeah.
Time spent in 1 year was very great times. We had some really good NCOs, both senior NCOs and junior NCOs. We had some really good OCs, and in those days, 1 year and 2 year were actually, well, I wouldn't say enemies, but rivals in many ways. We were always competing, 1 year and 2 year, and because the competition itself sometimes were fueled by even the commanding officer, because at one stage I can remember my commanding officer would say 2 years, they are, because the CO at the time really believed in beautification of the barracks, planting flowers and trees and stuff like that. So my CO would say, 2 year, they are farmers, we are soldiers, because he wasn't really interested in beautification, but he was more like a rough soldier, and so it would filter down to the troops. And whenever we have, like, competitions, whether any kind of sport is this, the rivalry was very intense, and at I tell you, there are times when it went overboard, you know, which you know, we had to jump on incidents like that. We had to jump on it right away to
make
kind
sure
of
things don't get too out of hand.
Right.
So when you made to sergeant now, where did you serve after being promoted to sergeant?
All right, when I got promoted to sergeant in 1993, I, as a matter of fact, I didn't do any time in one jar as a sergeant, basically, because when I got promoted, I was transferred to the support and service battalion where I went to Newcastle.
Mhm.
So I didn't really get to serve like in any company as a platoon sergeant or anything like that, because I was a very young sergeant when I went to Newcastle, because I just got promoted. And how I reached Newcastle was the intake that was up there. There was an incident, I think, somewhere in St. Mary where some incident, I don't quite remember what incident was it, but I think it had something to do with some shooting or whatever the case is. And the headquarters had made a decision to change. The only person that was left there was the DSM, and that was UK Mills. Yeah. He was the only person that was left from that intake as instructors or, you know, trainers. So we went up there and we relieved all of them, and we finished that intake that was up there. We finished training that intake. And I think I did the other intake after that. I did a full intake after that intake that we finished. So I spent 6 years in Newcastle. I think I did that part intake that we did. I did 2 other full intakes before I started doing course. I run cadres, and basically I did only cadres, training courses, you know. All the cadres, potential junior, senior, and I did a couple of battle courses, section battle course and platoon section commanders battle course, platoon sergeants battle course. So as I said, I did 2.5 intakes, and the remaining time I did mostly courses. All right, I said Colonel Mills was the DSM at the time. He eventually came down a couple of months, or maybe a couple of weeks after. And I think Major Beckers, who was then WO2 Beckers, I think he came up to relieve Colonel Mills, the DSM Mills. And after DSM Beckers, I think DSM Mackenzie, that is former First Sergeant Major. Bigger Mac, right. I think he came up and relieved DSM Beckers. So I served 3 DSMs during my time in Newcastle.
Yeah. When I was TO in Newcastle, I went there and I saw Mr. Mackenzie there.
Right.
As well.
Right. Because when he came up,
2000.
2007.
In 2000, I saw.
In 2000, right? Because he came up there in 1996. Mm-hmm. Because when he came up, I left up there shortly after he came up. Mm-hmm. Yes, but my time spent in Newcastle were great times, memorable times. And you know, once you have a man like Mancini Bennett as a part of the team, you know, mm-hmm. It's gonna be not a dull day, not a boring time, you know. So after a while, when we were only doing cadres, you have myself, Jericho Martin, Mancini, Albert Spencer,
Was Forrester there too?
Forrester was there. Brian, Dougie Fresh. You know, so it was that team of us that we, you know, we were the ones doing all the courses, and you know, we had a real good we had a real good team, because we had, you know, those names that I called, and I think you should know most of them. We're very professional persons, you know, persons who actually really know the work, know what is to be done. So we enjoyed that time, you know. In later years, well, I say later years, in later down in during that time, you had persons like Major Lysite, who was back then, he joined us. Paris, well, Tanka Campbell,
Lewis, Lepke Lewis.
Lewis, right?
Yeah.
So they came after, but you know, eventually, you know, joined the team, and we had some really good times, really good times, sir. You know, and as I said before, during a career, you have different phases that you go through. So my recruit phase, you have the time in one year, and then Newcastle. 3 different phases, but you know, 3 very enjoyable times, different experiences, you know.
So where did you go after your after Newcastle?
All right, sir. 1996, I was transferred back to Tujar. Well, I was transferred to Tujar, so when I went down, I went to Tujar Charlie Company as a sergeant. I was acting as the color sergeant, and then I got promoted shortly after to staff sergeant. From there, I went to support platoon as the 2IC support platoon, right? Been there headquarter company Tuja for I spent about 6. I spent about, I don't remember how long, but I spent a good little while at headquarter company as 2IC support platoon. During that time, I acted as a sergeant major for headquarter company. I acted as a sergeant major for Bravo company. So you know, whenever there's a vacancy, when a sergeant major is gone off and leave, I would act in their capacity until they're coming back. So I started to get the experience from that time, you know, in that role. Yeah, so, and I was also still in training. So I was very involved in training especially with the shooting team, right? So you know, because you know, I was a good shooter. Well, I still am, but so whenever it comes on to shooting, whether it be a shooting competition, march and shoot, or whatever the case is, I was always involved, whether it's my company or the unit, right? You know, so I've been doing that kind of training with the unit from the whole time I was there. I think when I stopped, the time when I stopped actually getting physically involved in the training was when I became the RSM. But right up to the time when I was a sergeant major at Alpha Company, I was training the battalion team, you know.
Yeah.
So after I left, well, while at headquarter company, I got promoted to warrant officer class 2, and I went to Alpha Company as a sergeant major. I'm trying to remember You know, I'm getting old enough, so I can't remember some things.
That's all right. But I know that you having served some time in the infantry. What were some of the memorable operations that you deployed on locally, and did you get the opportunity to deploy in any of them overseas as well? Because I know that those are always very interesting periods during anyone's career to be operating outside of Jamaica.
Well, I didn't mention it, but back in my early days in one jar, I actually had the opportunity to go to Grenada.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I went to Grenada. Well, my company, we went to Grenada 1983, 84, 85.
Okay.
So we actually had the opportunity to go there those 3 years. And when the Grenada operations were coming to a close, we were, you know, a lot of people were hoping that it would have continued for a little while because the experience is good, you know.
And people get so familiar with the area and all them.
Right.
You know, so some soldiers say them start run for mayor.
Yeah. So if I ever tell you some things we have my Grenada, especially I tell you, but I won't
not fit for your play.
I won't get into that. You know? I never get to do any of the Haiti deployments because there were two occasions. I think there's one before, no, three at least. There was one before the earthquake, there was the earthquake, and there was one after the earthquake. But I didn't get to go on any of those deployments. But I'm gonna tell you an incident with the same Haiti deployment, but further down I'll tell you because that is in 2JAR when I was Harrison. Yeah, but apart from that, I got the opportunity to do some training overseas. While I was in Newcastle, I went to Bermuda to train recruits. So I had the opportunity. I went to Bermuda. I also did some other courses. I went to Belize to do the field fire and qualification course. I did my drill course in Purbright. I did my small arms instructor course in Warminster. Well, I also had the opportunity to go on a Calypso hop, 1987. I went to England on the exchange, which was, you know, really great experience. So,
what rank were you when you went to Calypso?
I was a Lance Corporal.
Okay.
But I'm gonna give you a joke with that. The 1987 Labor Day, because we went to England the day after Labor Day, and I'm gonna tell you why I can't forget that. Labor Day, we had some machetes, myself and some of our friends, and we said that we were going to do some Labor Day work. Anyway, we ended up never doing the cleanup that we said we were going to do. We ended up going out to Palisades Road. You know, I don't know if you heard about Gunboat Beach. But a beach here in Palisades Road. But we didn't go to the beach. We actually went, stopped and went in the water before we reached the beach, and we were there fooling around. I saw this big fish swimming around my foot, you know. I'm saying to myself, what is this fish doing here, sir? So I said to one of my friends, look at this big fish. But he had one of the machines that we had shot the day, sir. For the cleanup.
Labor Day project, yeah.
Right. So we actually took them with us. I don't know. We were saying that we're gonna chop fish. But I was grabbing the fish. And he was chopping at the fish at the same time. And If I almost chop off my finger, you know the only reason why my two fingers didn't get severed completely because my hand went under the water before the machine chopped it.
Okay. So the water took off some of that.
Took off some of it. And when I took up my hand and look, you know, I could see the bone in one of my index finger here.
Yeah.
It actually chopped the bone. And I was so frightened. So get a toy wrap up my finger and we head up to UE. Went to the hospital. I tell you, I'm going to England the next morning, sir. I was supposed to be going to England next morning. I never leave the hospital until about 4 o'clock the next morning. That is when I actually got through with stitching up and bandage. And they wrapped my hand in a big old bandage, you know, sir. Like I don't know.
Yeah, like so a broke hand, bro.
Like I broke my hand. Just, I mean, I would have wrapped my finger, big bandage all over my hand. So I said, if I go in with this bandage, I'm not going to go to England. Then I will take me off the trip. So when I reach home, I take off the bandage and just put on two tape, Band-Aid. And I went in and I ended up going to England. But when I reached, because it was my right hand, so you know I would be affected using rifle and stuff like that. So when I reached, I went to the detachment commander, Major Gardner, and I explained to him what had happened, that I damaged my finger, and so luckily because luckily he understood and he said, okay, just do what you can do, all right, and try not to irritate it. So I actually did everything. I went to the bush, everything. I did what you call that thing, you slide across the and the cable. But the only thing is that out in the field,
I think it's called winching.
Right, something like that. Yeah. I went into the field, everything. I had my rifle, everything, but I had to sling my rifle because I couldn't use it to do any kind of exercise and stuff like that. But that was one of the occasions that I cherish, because getting a chance to go to a foreign country, flying on a big jet. That is the first time I'm going on. No. Apart from that, I went to Grenada, so I'd flown on the big jets before. But 747, that was one of the biggest aircraft about at the time, and we were all excited to go in this big old aircraft, And when we reach England, sir, the bar in the plane had no drinks, no alcohol, no water. The hostess said from she's flying is the first to see that happen. Everything finished because soldiers are all over in the place, all in the bar, soldiers, walking up and down. And
yeah, because them time they could have moved about,
Right, couldn't move about.
And I remember also, as you rightfully said, those days you actually had a bar.
Right,
yeah. So it's not just seats. You could get up and go sit around a bar and have a drink.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are sometimes I remember that you get to go travel overseas. I also went to Puerto Rico and trade winds. So I've been a couple of places. Which great experience. So continuing my time in Tujar there, Alpha Company as a sergeant major, I spent about 3 years, no, about 2 years something as a sergeant major. Then I became the drill sergeant. So, moving up. As I was saying, even when I was a drill sergeant, I was still training the battalion team when they come on to march and shoot and shooting competition and stuff like that. But so I was training inclined from I was from I was a young soldier right through my army career. Then I eventually became the sergeant major in 2008. No, 2009. 2009, I became the sergeant major. I took over from the RSM. I took over from WO1 row. And I was a sergeant major. I was at RSM, should say, until about 2013. Right? That's when I left and I went to IG department. But the time spent in Tuja again, sir, that was a different phase of my career, you know. And as you know, each time you go up in rank, it's a different feeling. It's a different way of doing things, you know. So I think I've experienced, you know, real growth during that. Well, during all of my career, you know, the growth was gradual because I wasn't like promoted very fast. I had the opportunity to really grow in a rank, you know, and learn the work. And the good thing, you know, is that you know, I always like to learn the job or learn the job of the person that is above me. Yeah. You understand me, sir? So for instance, when I was a section commander, I always
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Okay. When I was a section commander, I was always hoping that the sergeant would take sick and can't come to work. Yeah, because especially on inspection days, because I want to hand over the platoon, you know, and I would always want to do the sergeant's work. And you know, each time you get that opportunity, you would jump at it to really act in the capacity above your rank, you know. And I think that helps a lot going through that, you know, when you actually get promoted, or you know, or you're put into a position that you're gonna act above, you know, your rank, then you won't have much problems because you would have already, you know, tried to gain some experience of how to operate. So that was one of my way of doing things during my career, you know. So
you weren't rougher than Eagle when Eagle get the reins at depot.
Sir?
You weren't as rough as Eagle when Eagle get the reins at depot.
No. No, sir, no. No, I was as rough, but you know, coming up and you really experience the experience that you have with people like him, you know, really kind of help you to, you know, kind of help you to, when you get into certain situation, how you deal with it. You know, can you look on and see, not that you're gonna do it exactly like they did, but you know, sometimes people would do the wrong things.
Yeah.
And then you say, look here, you're not gonna do things like that. Or you might choose to emulate them and do exactly what they did. Because, for instance, you know, a lot of persons who became instructors, they would do to recruits or to students exactly what the instructor did to them.
Yeah.
So they don't really try to have a character of their own. They try to emulate everything that the instructor did. And sometimes it doesn't really work for them, you know? So,
yeah.
So, you know, all in all, the persons that you encounter during your career, some good, some bad, you know, indifferent, and it really helps you to really make a decision or decide, you know, how you're gonna operate. But the most important thing though is be yourself, right?
Yeah.
Be yourself. Whatever posture you're gonna take, and make sure you are doing it naturally, being yourself, because it doesn't make sense to pretend.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
You can't continue to pretend all the time. You know.
So how was time in the IG department? Because you know that is definitely a different approach to work.
Right.
And within that department, and also with your capacity, it's more of a big hand, force-wide, strategic
Right.
approach to a lot of things.
Right. Okay. When I went to the IG department, basically the WO1 in that department would be responsible for ceremonials. So I was RSM IG, responsible for ceremonials. And basically why that post was actually created was to actually take some of the pressure off the 4-star major, because the 4-star major would be the person who would be involved with everything, right? And so a lot of times he wouldn't really get the opportunity to be doing what because he works closely with the chief of defense staff. So instead of the 4-star major being all over the place, then the ceremonial RSM would take some of that responsibility. So but the 4-star major, he would still have oversight on everything, but the ceremonial RSM would take the charge or take the lead, in a number of things. And I can tell you, we work closely with the Office of the Prime Minister and the Governor General's King's House, right? So whenever you have any form of ceremonial activity, I wouldn't even say, well, inside the JDF, because you have funerals, you have passing out, you have parades, you have functions, which yes, the ceremonial RSM would take the charge and make sure everything is all right. But apart from that, you have some activities outside of the JDF that you have to be involved in. So any visit, any visit, any parade or any event, especially when you're gonna have like the Prime Minister or the Governor General attending, once it has a ceremonial content to it,
yeah.
right? So we would be involved in terms of setting up, preparing, setting up, and ensuring that everything, because there are some things that they would depend on the military to do, especially if you're gonna have like an era where you're gonna set up tents, or you're gonna have a parade, in terms of lining up the era, deciding where you're gonna put the tents and stuff like that. So we would work closely with those offices to ensure that those are sorted out. When you have like visits from other countries,
State and so forth.
state visit, right? Some of them you have working visits, you have official visit, state visit. So we are heavily involved. The IG department is heavily involved where that is concerned, because you coordinate a lot of things, right? You coordinate a lot of things. We coordinate, apart from the parade, the Guard of Honor, we coordinate the movements from points to points. We coordinate like the ceremonial firing of the guns.
So you were there when Obama visited?
Yes, sir. I was very, very much involved in that in that visit.
Boy, that was a lot of pressure, a lot of moving parts.
I learned some things, because his security team, they came down. Well, some of them came down a good while before he came, and let me tell you, we had problems with them, because I mean, you know how they operate. They want to dictate to us what we should do, and we understand that. But sometimes some of the things that they want to do, it can't work out here. So we had challenges with them sometimes, but we always work it out, But I tell you, a whole lot of preparation went into that visit. It was a day and night thing, day and night, and the thing about it, sir, is that sometimes, when we write a the instructions for the visit. You know, like every day you have to do a new one. For about 2 weeks, every day you do a different instruction because so
I remember because I was training major down at 3GR, and I remember that every day, including Saturday and Sunday, we met in the morning,
right, sir,
in JIAC, and then met at night at JIAC, and your briefing at night was meant for you to go after the briefing to go and do some work.
So, yes,
to be ready for the morning briefing.
For the morning brief.
Man, it was hectic.
Right. Yes, sir. But I tell you, each of those visits are so. I mean, even though sometimes you end up doing the same routine, but they are so different. You know that when Maduro, the Venezuelan president, when he came out here, there was a conference. There's a conference down in Mobile. We had this conference at the conference center down there. And we had it, I think it was a CARICOM conference. But he was the headliner. Even though you had prime ministers from most of the other small islands coming also, but he was like the headliner because he was like the big thing. And you know,
remember the oil money, you know.
Right, exactly, sir. And it wasn't really a state visit. It was like I wouldn't even it was more like a official visit, but it wasn't, because it was a case where they're entitled to like guard of honor or anything like that. So we had to I don't know if you remember, we had to like come up with because we're not gonna have a parade, so we had to come up with something just to, you know, when they come to greet them. So
what I think you're trying to say is that we had to do a parade that didn't look like a parade.
Exactly. So we made up something because what we did, we had the band down there. We had when the plane land, the band would be in a position and they would still get the red carpet and they would walk past and their anthem would be played and they would, you know, walk past and get and they would acknowledge your anthem and then they carry on. But you know, but the reason why I bring up that visit, Maduro, when we were at the conference center, when he was to come there, the morning he was to come there for the function. When his vehicle come in, sir, and the MPs were standing by to open the door. When they open the door, you know, they're gonna open the back door so that the dignitary can come out. You know where he was? He was driving the vehicle.
He was driving the vehicle?
Yes. He was driving the vehicle, and he did it also when he came to Era Circle, down by Simon Bolivar statue. He was driving the vehicle, you know. So, you know, you see some things I say, boy, I tell you. But you know, again, working at the IG department was also a different phase of my career, which, you know, a different experience. But they were good times, sir. They were good times. You know, I got to meet a lot of people outside of the JDF, interact with a lot of people. Sometimes I rubbing shoulders with some real big dignitaries, you know, and yeah, those were some good times.
So at the end of your Army career, how many years did you serve? Well, I retired in February 2019. I ended up doing 37 years and 6 months. Okay.
Right.
Now, another important aspect coming out of everything is, you know, you're married.
Right, sir.
So yes, sir. How did you manage, or how were things in terms of having that stability at home, but yet still, as you know, we are at the beck and call of the JDF. How did you manage that?
All right. Well, first of all, I got married in 1988. During that time, there was a general strike. Just to give you a synopsis of, general strike, we had prison water strike, water commission, fireman. So we were all over the place, and so you had limited soldiers to go around. So sometimes when you go on a guard station, you spend like a 9-day or a 10-day. During the month of February, when I was supposed to get married, because I got married on 20th of February, and for that, basically 3 weeks leading up to the wedding, I spent most of that time on guard. I actually got a chance to go home. I think it was about 2 days before the wedding, just to kind of, so my wife, she had to be doing all of the stuff, all of the preparation. So you can imagine, even before I got married, there was a strain and things, but we were young that time, and she actually understood what the army was all about. So
some of us would say training, but others would say, boy, she get good training.
Well, I tell you, sir.
That was her recruit training prior to getting the ring.
Right.
Don't tell her I said that to them. I hope she's not listening.
So we got married, and we're together 34 years now. And I as with anybody who has a union that long, you must expect that it's not gonna be smooth that the whole time. You're gonna have ups and you're gonna have downs. And let me tell you something. And you might even know that. Especially when soldiers get married, most of the times in the best time of your marriage is the earlier part and the latter part. If you stay together that long, the earlier part and the latter part. And I can tell you, because when you're young and in love and you get married, you're kind of not even too care about somebody. You just want, you're so in love that, You just want to see the person. Right, exactly. But after a while, you get used to each other, and you get used to, and then you're not getting a chance to go home as much as you like. She can't see as much as she wants to see you. Sometimes when they start to have children, she alone have all the work with the child, to go to doctor, to go to school, and all those things. So, and you start to hear that, boy, she alone doing everything, and, and when you find that start happening, then you have to be very careful. You have to be very smart in how you deal with things. So, during our marriage, there are times when things kind of get sticky sometimes with the work. And at times there's nothing you can do, because you have to be at work. Yeah. But what you try to do is keep well, we didn't have cell phones in those times, but as best as possible, you have to try and keep the communication, and the least chance you get, because when you get a little time, or you can't go road, go idle, you have to go home to reassure her that things can work and stuff like that. So you try to involve, when you get a little time, you try to involve her in anything, and also as much as possible, whenever you can, or whenever I could, I try to get her involved in what I could get her involved in the army. If you have any things like function that I would take her, try to get her to meet some of my colleagues, which she knew a lot of them, because even when I was in Delta Company, as a private soldier in Delta Company 1 year, we used to know each other's girlfriend, right? Everybody knew everybody's girlfriend, because we said, well, we don't want to pass her on the road and see her in trouble, and we want to know that, yes, this is somebody that we need to help and stuff like that. So even though when my friends call me from back in those, that I served with from back in those days, and most of them from the call me and say, where's Mama Angie? Because that's what they used to call her. Where's Mama Angie? And some of them would say, boy, me can't believe you want to stay together so long. But I said, yeah, man, but it's something you have to work at.
No, man, should take one for the team.
You know, so in the middle of our relationship, that is when, you know, I had the most challenges, because it's not like now, when the higher up you go in rank, you have the more work you have to do. Back then, the higher you go in rank is the less work you get to do. You know, so I mean, it's the less work you have to do. So as a private soldier, you have the foot soldier out there every day. The corporal he might get a little more chance to go home. But when you become a sergeant, we have a little more chance than the corporal to go home. So you get promoted, you know, you get a little bit more time to spend with your family. And so, you know, so by the time you reach staff sergeant, sergeant major, then, you know, you basically can go home a lot more, you know, so things start to change. You know, things start to change. And so that is how it is. And you know, whenever they vent their anger, their frustration, you have to understand their concerns. You have to understand and know, you know, that is what the relationship is all about. And you have to try your best to really work on it. And you have to give and take. And sometimes you have to just talk to them and let them understand. You know, even though they might say they understand, but you have to reassure them. You know, but 34 years, and I know I have a good relationship, a good marriage. As I sit here, I can say I am quite happy the way things turn out. Right, sir.
All right, so, you know, any final words of advice for some of the persons watching who are, one, person's considering to join the JDF, two, those who are at the early part of their career, and three, those who are coming towards the end and preparing for that transition as well?
All right, I would say the persons who are looking to join the army, even though things have changed somewhat since I was a recruit, the army is right now, I think, in terms of having a meaningful career, I think the army is a place to think about, because I know the work is very hard now, because, you know, I have a lot more work to do, but there's a lot of opportunities, a whole lot of opportunities in the army that that young men and women can benefit from. And if you know, it is not a sprint. Joining the army, it is something that you have to work at and gradually develop, right? And don't try to get ahead of yourself, you know, gradually develop. And as I say, the opportunities will come because they're there. And I think it's a good place to build your character in terms of discipline and being responsible. Now, for the young soldiers that are serving now, you know, there's a lot of distraction out there now, a whole lot of distraction, and you know, it is very easy for them to get sidelined and lose focus on what they are really about. And you know, I would just like to encourage them to think about, you know, I was told at one stage when I was a young soldier, look here, anything you do in the army, no matter how small you think it is, it really affects the whole country. right? No matter how small the thing, it really affects the whole country. So just think about what you do and how you do things.
Yeah.
Right? Because it really affects, it really, if you think about it, it really
we're a small
affects the whole,
nation, and,
right.
and all our actions can be seen as
Can be seen.
strategic.
Right,
So
exactly.
it's very important that we act accordingly.
Right, sir. All right. So and you know, I would also encourage them, just don't think of it as a job to get a paycheck, but think of the contribution that you're making, right? The contribution that you're making to your country.
Yeah.
So persons who have served and are looking to retire, especially persons who have done quite a number of years, you know, what I want to say to them is that it is not so easy as they might think, you know, after you serve 20, 30 years to just leave and be transformed again into a total civilian, you know. There are gonna be things that you need to think about, things that you need to put in place before you retire. I can tell you something. When I retired, because I'm working now, but I was working for a little while. And in the mornings when I'm taking my wife to work, I was always hurrying her up. I was always getting her on her to hurry up and get dressed. Look at the time. But she had time to go to work. I wasn't going anywhere. And sometimes I would say to myself, but wait, I'm not going anywhere. So when I drop off at work, I go back home and I don't have nothing to do. So, you know.
You still probably had the 0745 Musta in your head.
But sir, even now. So, you know, so you have to think about that. So you have to think about, you know, what is it you want to do? Is it that you're going to retire completely, or you're going to be working? So you're going to think about what you want to do, you know, and stuff like that. So make plans, make preparations before you retire. Don't wait until you're actually out there before you start making preparations. You have to start to make the preparations now. So looking at it, I think in the absence of the army now, our army don't have the capacity to or don't have the system in place for resettlement. You know, it is good to think about some form of qualifying yourself in some way, so that makes you marketable when you retire. Yeah, it makes it much easier for you to get a job. But all in all, sir, I think people who have served for, you know, that number of years, I think the experience that they would have gained, which I hope that they have, will help them a lot. Will help them a lot when they are retired, because, you know, you can really adapt to any kind of situation.
Well, Mr. Ingram, I want to tell you thank you very much for accepting my invitation again. And this one seemed to have gone very well, and even better than the first one, because we could safely assume the first one was a rehearsal.
Yes.
And I really appreciate the time that you've taken out to sit with us and to get a lot of us to know a little bit more about Lenny Ingram.
Yes,
I must say, from my personal standpoint, it was indeed a pleasure serving with you as well when I met you at 2GR. And also for those instances out on the range, even though you were far ahead and I've put down the shooting thing. I know I was out there as the 4 shooting officer, and, you know, senior persons always come and, like yourself, talk to me and give me a little advice and thing to make sure that things running smoothly and check up on me as well. So again, thank you very much. I also want to encourage our viewers and subscribers for this channel to continue to look at contributing to the Curfew Home. It's a place that needs a lot of care and attention. And also wherever you are, whether to be a member of Jamaica Legion or the local JESA, Jamaica Ex-Soldiers Association, so that we can continue to create that bond and have that camaraderie long after we would have served our time within the force, and we continue to give back in some way or form to support each other. Thank you again, Mr. Ingram.
You're welcome, son. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Left, right, left, rider, left, rider, left, rider, left, rider. A 1, 2,
G4,
1, 2,
G4, 1, 2, 1, 2.
When I say 1, then you say 2. When I say red and white, you say blue. 1, 2, red and white. 2. When I say 3, then you say 4. When I say PT, you say more. 1, 4, red and white. 4, 3, 4, PT. 4. When I say 5, then you say 6. When I say just 4, you say kicks. 1, 2, red and white. 3, 4, PT. 4, 5, 6, just 4 kicks. When I say 7, then you say 8. When I ask how you feel, you say great. 1, 2, red and white. 3, 4, PT. 4, 5, 6, just 4 kicks. 7, 8, how you feel? Great. When I say 9, then you say 10. When I say we're going, you say again. 1, 2, red and white. 3, 4, PT. 4, 5, 6, just 4 kicks. 7, 8, how you feel? Great. 9, 10, we're going again. 9, 10, we're going again.